Dave Arena, and I just want to say thank you for being a guest on my talk show.
Oh, thanks for having me, Keith.
Now, for people who want to know what Uncensored is, Uncensored's my way of showing people that even if we're learning disability, I can still overcome controversy and reach my goals in life. At the same time, I'm able to turn myself into a perfect example for people out there, deaf, blind, or in a wheelchair, or dealing with any type of disability, that you should never label yourself or have people label you, and you should prove to them you can still mount something. And don't mind me, I had to lower my camera because I was having a glare from the window. And like I said, it's uncensored. You have a half hour, 45 minutes. You can say anything you want. You can say I'm an asshole. It's completely whatever you want to do. This is your time. So starting off, what can you tell me about yourself?
Well, I am a comedian here in New York City. I'm actually from Cleveland, Ohio, where started comedy about 10, 11 years now. So I did comedy in Cleveland. I think it was about 11 years ago. I started at the Cleveland Improv, and also an entrepreneur. So I have a couple different businesses that have come and gone as I've created some great ideas, and then have also had some great fall on my face moments as well, which I guess through my experience, luckily enough, has always spun me in a direction that has always worked out in a positive way, even though at the time I couldn't really see it. So I kind of had those kind of two distinct paths where, I've had businesses that I've created to allow myself to allow myself the lifestyle that I wanted in terms of not necessarily materialistic things, but being able to do what I want, when I want, be here for the kids and the wife and support them, of course. And then there's been the comedy path, kind of going along parallel with it. I moved to, actually it's an interesting story because my wife and I both decided 4.5 years ago to move to New York City. What happened, a bunch of things happened. One of the businesses that I had was going downhill. We kind of had everything. We had the house in the suburbs and two cars and I guess what a lot of people would think was the American dream. And I don't want to say we were miserable. We were pretty happy, but when the business started failing, our house burned down. This all happened within like a couple months. It kind of got us away from that materialistic thought process, and we kind of wanted to scale down and live a little leaner and kind of go for our dreams and what we really wanted to do instead of just chasing the money or the business side. My wife had been doing makeup for weddings and freelance makeup just on the side. She never had gone to school or anything, but she had a knack for it. But she was always into celebrity and TV and film, so she wanted to pursue makeup. So what happened was she applied to a local makeup school scholarship where she had to write an essay, and they chose her, and she won the scholarship. Well, quickly after, a few weeks after, they sent her a letter and revoked the scholarship because the paid enrollment wasn't enough to hold a class. So I guess their scholarship hinged on the fact that they needed so many paid enrollees to make it, to make the scholarship. So that was kind of a devastating blow in one sense, but in another sense, we started thinking, and we're like, well, all this stuff has happened. Maybe it's a sign that, the universe is telling us to kind of go for what we want to go for. So I told her, I said, I always wanted to be in New York City to do comedy. Here it's like comedy capital of the world, and stop doing some of the road things and, just kind of plant myself there and get better. top, makeup schools, it would also be good there, and there's also going to be more opportunities, in TV there.
Right.
So we started looking around, quickly found one, and kind of per our MO, we just kind of jumped jumped up the ledge first and then learned how to fly later. We just figured, hey, let's just do it. And a lot of people thought we were crazy because, we're doing this huge move. We just decide on this big thing, in our mid-30s with 3 daughters, what I mean? So this was what most people would consider, I guess, a young person's move, where you do, kind of do crazy things in your 20s. But here we are, 35 years old, with 3 kids. So what we did is we packed. I mean, literally within I think we had decided this in the late summer. She got into the school. We were gone by November 1st, and moved our whole family from a 5,000 square foot house in the suburbs of Cleveland with all our family and friends to New York City and Brooklyn to a 900 square foot apartment, 2 bedrooms where all the girls are smashed in one room. So it was a big adjustment, but yeah, it's worked out great. I mean, I started another business, marketing business that is really thriving at this point. Comedy is going well. I mean, it's a lot of open mics and kind of grinding it out, but it's definitely made me a better comedian. And my wife really she graduated from her school. One of the the thing about my wife that's interesting is she was always told that she couldn't, this isn't for you. You know what I mean? Like, you shouldn't go to college. Maybe you should just work. You know what I mean? Like, her
right.
parents never helped her with the college paperwork or trying to get, you know what I mean? So she always kind of carried that with her, that, this you shouldn't go for what you want to go for. And it's been a long road with me helping her kind of through that and emotionally lifting her up. And the other thing that was interesting is when she went to school, she didn't realize that, even though it was makeup school, a lot of it, she was in class with a bunch of 18-year-olds because they're going to college for the first time, and here she is, she could be their mother in some cases. But she thrived in that environment, and for the first time, she kind of got that validation or that feedback from, the teachers, that, how talented she was in the work that she was doing. So she graduated, and right away, she got some opportunities where, her first big opportunity was with Susie Orman, the financial guru, and what was funny there is, this kind of leads into what we're talking about, where people make a lot of excuses, or, I can't do this, or I'm too old, or I've got this disability, or what have you. The business manager from the school called, and they don't really place you at that school, but, if they have an opportunity that comes up, they'll think of different students, where it might be applicable. So she calls her up and she said, I have this opportunity with Susie Orman as her kind of personal makeup artist when she's in New York City. I can't send any of these young kids to her. She'd either eat them alive, you know what I mean? So she sent Vicky, and she hit it off with her, did a great job. And, that just goes to show you that it was really her age and her maturity that got her that, that job in that case. So it worked for her instead of against her. And then from there, she got into NBC. She started working on Shop NBC and CNBC, some lower level shows, and then she had a few months in to working for NBC, she applied for the late show with Jimmy Fallon before it was the Tonight Show, and didn't get it. And they basically told her, we really like your work. We really like, you're always on time, you're professional, but you've only been here a few months, so, we just wanted to come in and talk to you. We don't know if you're really ready for it yet. So she didn't get it. A year later, with more experience under her belt, he gets the Tonight Show and decides to bring it back to New York after 42 years in L.A., which is again another one of those things in the universe that's a weird coincidence. You know what I mean? So she applies again. They remember her. They know her, and she got it this time. So when they just had their 1 year anniversary in February. So when they moved the show in February of 2014, she started, and she's worked there, since the show started here in New York. So, it's just amazing in 4 years what could happen, and we kind of just took the chance. Didn't really let any, no regrets. We didn't want any regrets. We didn't want to make any excuses. We just wanted to kind of keep our head down and work hard and see what may come of it. And so far it's paying off. So it's been quite an experience for sure.
That's true. I'm like the same way with my talk show. I just jumped in head first, and whatever happens, happens. It's a learning experience.
Yeah, and I've done the same thing with any project. I have a radio show that we do. It was a live radio show on Blog Talk, but we're turning it into a podcast that's just better quality and more produced. But that was the same thing. It was like I just kind of had a concept that I wanted to do. It's called "It Doesn't Matter, You're Gonna Die." It's basically just what it is we just allow people to vent and kind of get things off their chest and try to let it go, and then we give what we feel is good advice, even though a lot of times it isn't, and that's kind of where the comedy comes in. But since we're not self-help gurus, but we just hear a lot of people bitching about stuff on Facebook, and you know what I mean, and we just want to have a forum where people can, so people post on our blog and they kind of get their rants out, and then we pick the best ones and discuss them on the show, and try to pick some funnier ones, to have some comedy in there. But it was the same thing. I mean, we didn't know what we were doing. I picked two friends of mine that were also comedians that I knew would do it with me until we didn't want to do it anymore. They didn't care about being paid, or there's no money in it at this point. You know what I mean? But I knew these guys would do it with me. We had a good chemistry, and we just did it. And that's kind of been my MO. I just do things, and whether it's business, personal, whatever. I don't really have any fear in that. I guess it's maybe my fate that I just feel like, hey, I'll land on my feet, and if I have an intention and throw it out there, and then go for it with a lot of action, that people, resources, things kind of appear as you need them, I guess, and and things happen when they're supposed to happen, and that's definitely been true in my wife's case for sure.
That's true. I think of myself like a cat because cats always land on their feet.
Yeah.
And supposedly some dogs land on their feet, but I used to have a fear of falling, and it was not. The more I think about it, it was not the fear of falling; it's the impact that you don't know how you're gonna land. But if you control it, and you feel like you're in control, then it isn't that scary. Yeah, it's scary as fuck that you're falling, but you don't know if you're gonna land or dive on the impact. But it's basically, like you said, what we're talking about: jump in and just taking it one step at a time, and just make it best of it.
Yeah, I think you have to, and like I said, it's led me to moments, I guess, where I don't, over the years, and don't get me wrong, I haven't always been that way where I didn't have fear like that. I mean, that's been gradual over the years, but through my experience, I've learned to kind of just let that go, because there's been times where I've made really bad decisions. I mean, I had a business where I got sued, and I mean, I'm talking, it wasn't anything criminal, but it was a copyright infringement with a big company, and they sent U.S. Marshals to my door. One morning, just banging on the door. They seized all my stuff. Froze my bank accounts.
For what?
I literally went from having all this money to not even being able to take the ATM. And, you know, so I've had my fall on my face moments, not only just, you know, financially, but also obviously that's an embarrassing time. And, but you learn from it and it spins you in another direction. You know, I remember when we were sitting there, my wife and I, you know, that was in 2003. And it's kind of interesting because I started our story with the comedy. It was in 2003 that happened, and I had just started comedy at that time, and I also was trying to start another business. And, you know, my wife had our second daughter on the way, and she did something really interesting. She basically told me, you know, because of course I felt bad. You know, I mean, she's pregnant with our second kid. You know, I've got to get a job or do something. You know, my background was in finance. And she told me, she's like, you know what? I'll go and work part-time right now. So now I feel even worse, right? Because my wife's pregnant and I'm making her go out and work. But she had a good vision. She said, you know, if you go back into the corporate world, you're going to get a decent job. You know, we'll be okay. And you'll be stuck being miserable like you were before, and you'll never get out of it, you know, or it may take you a while to get out of it. She's like, I want you to sit down and figure this out. You know what I mean? Figure out another business, another, you know, something else that you can do. And I'll, you know, if we have to put food on the table, I'll go work part-time. And that's what she did. She just went and worked at a grocery store. We were selling everything we had, you know, anything we had accumulated that we didn't need anymore. You know, so I guess my point is we kind of did whatever we had to do to kind of get through that time. And what was interesting is I had started another business teaching Forex trading, and that, you know, from having no money and starting from scratch. So again, going back to that theme of not making excuses no matter what. I mean, I didn't have a dime to my name. I put together some trading courses. You know, at first they were just ebooks, and I was trying to go online in message groups, wherever I could do like free advertising, or, you know, or in the trading community, the financial community, and I'd sell one or two here and there, you know, for $47, you know, nothing, you know, but I'd get excited each time, you know, and it wasn't gonna pay our bills at that point. But sure enough, just like in quick order, and I look back on it, I don't even really know how it happened. I don't know how we survived. I don't know how it happened that quickly, but month after month, it just built into something huge again. And you know, within a year or two, we had bought a $500,000 house. I had a Porsche. I had a, you know, Mercedes. I mean, looking back, and I don't say that like to brag. It's just ridiculous how quick it can. You know, it's. I guess the universe likes speed. You know what I mean? Like if you actually put that intention out there and you start working hard toward it, you know, things do develop quickly, just like it did when we were in New York City. So we've had kind of those. I guess what I'm saying is we've had those moments of like just complete disaster, and I guess what we've done really well is we've never judged that as good or bad. You know what I mean? It's just that's what happened, and now what? Now what are we going to do from here? And oftentimes it moved me in a direction, like I said, where I never would have, you know, gone that route. You know, I never would have had the trading business and all those things, and maybe not even have explored comedy if I wouldn't have got sued and had that experience, you know. And the same thing with New York. We would have never moved to New York and had everything going on that we have going on now if that second business didn't go under eventually. You know, it took a few years, but that went under too. And you know, again, you could look at that as bad, but I don't really judge things as good or bad. You know what I mean? I don't know if I just look at it. It is what it is, and I don't want to get too. I don't like when people throw around like, oh, it happens for a reason, and
right.
Because a lot of people throw those things around, but they don't actually follow through on those things in real life. You know what I mean? But it is kind of true, you know, like it's like one thing happens and then you're just like, okay, that happened, now what? What direction do we go now? And so I don't really dwell on it too much. And you know, my wife's obviously been a big supporter going along for the ride on any of my crazy ideas, which is a good thing too. And she's benefiting from that now, because she was like, I don't know about this New York thing and going back to school, and you know, but now she's very happy with what she does, obviously. So.
Well, you bring up the Marshall thing, and I did say, for what, I don't know if you heard me, but you said you were being sued and Marshall's banging on the door, and I said, for what? You know, how did that come about?
Yeah, so what happened was I had started, my background is in financial services, so I was a broker for, at the time, TD Waterhouse, and making a decent living. You know, it wasn't, wasn't anything great, but it was, you know, my wife and I both had just regular jobs. You know, combined we were doing fine. And so I had, at one point I had met a friend who was a computer guy, and what he was doing for people is he was, and I don't know if you have ever heard of this, but he was open, he had built a computer device that, and with some programming, he could open up your DirecTV card so that you didn't have to pay for anything, like pay-per-view, all your channels were free. And I don't know if they still have that or not, but it was big back, you know, that was, what, 11, almost 12 years ago. So I saw that he was doing this, and of course my entrepreneurial brain kicked in, and I thought, well, you know, I started doing research online, started seeing where I can purchase these devices that were, you know, cheap, and so I put up a website and started selling them, and it became one of the bigger dealers in North America. And again, there was nothing criminally wrong with it because they could technically use the device for other purposes. However, you know, they could prove that I knew or had sufficient enough knowledge, I guess,
right,
that people were using it for these purposes. DirecTV basically, they had been investigating it for 2 years, and they were able, again, it was under a copyright, you know, it wasn't criminal, it was civil, but because of the copyright infringement and because of the nature of what we were doing, they were able to go to a judge and get an order to seize everything and have marshals, you know, so even though it wasn't a criminal matter, they could actually go, because they didn't want you getting rid of any of the devices, or, you know what I mean, or tampering with any of the things that they've been investigating. So, yeah, it was, what was really interesting about that story is I kept feeling like I was being followed. You know, I'd go out to the gym and I'd see the same car, you know, following me. One day I was in my driveway and across the street was that same car. I remember it was a black Volkswagen, like a Volkswagen Jetta. And so I buzzed by him one time, and he got all nervous and jetted out of there. And I was like, okay, there's something. And my wife thought I was crazy. She just thought I was like being paranoid, you know. And to be honest, I mean, this is kind of like out of a movie, but you also started hearing rumors online. Like, I would get emails from anonymous people saying, yeah, you're being investigated, you know what I mean? And the thing is, you get kind of greedy, right? When the money's coming in, you don't really want to shut it down, you know? So, maybe that wouldn't have mattered anyhow because they already had all their information. But yeah, so I had come home from working out. It was like 9 in the morning. My wife was still sleeping. I started getting, you know, out of my sweat clothes, getting ready to take a shower, and, you know, hear bam, bam, bam on the door, and I was like, what the, you know, thought maybe a delivery or something, but then it just kept getting louder, so I, like, throw my sweatpants back on, go to the door, and they were about to bust that door down. They weren't going to give me many more seconds to open that door.
Right.
And it was just an all-day I mean, they came in, they had cars lined up down. I mean, we felt so bad because we were thinking our neighbors probably think this is some kind of drug bust or something. You know what I mean? So they came in, they seized everything, all my office stuff. They hit me with a lawsuit. The papers were about, they were about like this high. So it was like, they had all my financial records for 2 years. It was crazy. So what ended up happening is, then I had to get an attorney and spend even more money, and then eventually we settled with them, and so I gave them all my money, basically. That's how it works against a big company when you can't really fight them. It's just like, okay, I'll just give you all my money now, and that's it. So between the lawyer and them, we were down to nothing. But like I said, part of the court order was they were able to freeze my account, so I didn't even have any money to do any, even if I would have won against them, it would have taken a long time to, I had all my money frozen. It was it was a difficult time, also a very interesting time, obviously, but yeah, so that's how that whole thing went down.
All right, now wrapping up, the last subject I want to ask you is, how did you start your comedy career? And do you have any influences or anyone who influenced you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I started, I hate to say late in the game, because I think comedy is something that you can do, at any age. But I started when I was 30, and I had always been. What's weird about me is I've always been shy, and I've always been like I was not the class clown. I was always the kid that wanted to sit in the back and not raise their hand and not participate in class. But around my family and friends, when I was comfortable, then I was very much the funny person. You know what I mean? So I always had the kind of those two personalities. All the really, and even so, where like family would be like, oh, you should be a comedian, that type of thing. So I've always wanted to do it from the time I remember you asked about influences. I was 10 years old. It was at my 10-year birthday party. Believe it or not, I don't know why my parents or anyone else thought this was appropriate, but my aunt brought Eddie Murphy Delirious, the cassette tape. And let's say I was 10, so this was 1983, somewhere in that neighborhood, and played it. I mean, at my birthday party, which, there were other kids there, and you know what I mean? I was only 10 myself. It wasn't the cleanest, comedy special. But from there, I was like, that was my first influence, and that's what I grew up on. So I grew up on Eddie Murphy, grew up on Saturday Night Live in that era, and then, my high school college years were like when SNL had Farley and Sandler and Mike Myers, that cast, and then later on I would get into, like, once I got into stand-up a lot, it was, George Carlin, and even modern influence, Louis C.K., and, things, so I'm taking, I have influences all across the board. But yeah, so I started relatively late at 30 because I always wanted to do it, but to be honest, I was scared to death. I really was. I just didn't know. I didn't know, first of all, being shy, I guess there was a lot of stage fright there, but also there was fear of, how do I translate how I'm funny maybe around the table with my sisters or with my friends? How do I translate that to the stage? I didn't know if it would be the same kind of funny or if I could be the same kind of funny. So I saw an ad for the Cleveland Improv had auditions every Monday at like noon. And you go there, and it was just other comics, and you just performed 3 minutes in front of the general manager, and he would give you notes on how to improve, and you just kept coming back. And the goal was to eventually be on a showcase where you can bring your family and friends. It was kind of an amateur showcase. So I did this for weeks and weeks, and finally did the showcase, and it went well, and I was just hooked from that point. and didn't realize that not every show was going to go like that. You know, it's going to be a lot of ups and downs over the years. But yeah, I relatively quickly I did. You know, I remember going to the Improv, and the manager Lee Herlins there told us right off the bat. I mean, he's kind of like a gruffy, you know, rough around the edges. I mean, he'll tell you like it is for sure, and he's taught me a lot. I mean, he told me, he's like, well, you won't even get on our stage for 3 years, so don't even, you know, even as an MC at the lowest level. And I was able to do my first week after 10 months of doing it. So I'm always proud of that because, you know, was I anywhere near ready? No. You know, I probably had, you know, a few good shows and several average ones that week, but at the same time, I got paid to do comedy, you know, at an A-level club where, you know, within a year. So, yeah, and then the rest is history. I just, you know, did a lot of road stuff, did a lot of things in Cleveland, and then, you know, I made the move to New York City 4 years ago. So that's, like I said, it's a parallel path with my business career. Although the comedy hasn't had so many big moments, but yet it also hasn't had, you know, I haven't had any disasters on that path yet. So
now, what do you think? What takes priority in your life, the comedy or doing your talk show?
I kind of see them interrelated. I mean, stand-up is first for me, I guess is the short answer. But, you know, I just feel that you have to have multiple things going on to try to promote yourself, or, you know what I mean? So I enjoy the talk show I enjoy the talk show because it's a different medium. It allows me to maybe be, you know, show some of my personality without really having a stand-up act per se, you know what I mean? And it's also another avenue for marketing and promotion and kind of getting myself out there. So I think they're intertwined, but I would say stand-up is my number one.
Hey, now I know we hinted towards this in the interview, but what motivated you to create your own talk show, and have you interviewed any big names? And I would love to be a guest. Yeah, but who have you interviewed, or who do you want to interview?
Yeah, we started off. You know, our show is a little bit different because it's not so much an interview show, although in the beginning when we really didn't have an identity, we did tend to have guests on and do more of an interview style. But really what our show is about is having people vent, which we call F-offs. You know, we just want to F off whoever or whatever is going on in your life and getting it off your chest. And then we like to use the guests to either give their own F-offs if there's something they want to get off their chest, or they can just join in the discussion of the F-offs that we're talking about. We've had, I'm trying to think who we've had. We've had Lana Turner, who's Ralphie May's wife, and a comedian in her own right, very, very, very funny. She does a lot of musical comedy. Jimmy Schubert, who went far in Last Comic Standing, and he's been doing comedy forever. Really good guy. Tom Simmons. We've had a lot of self-help gurus. We've had porn stars. We've had just a lot of different, mostly comedians. Trying to think who else. That's I mean, we haven't had any. I guess it just depends on what you mean by huge names. You know, I mean, I haven't had Chris Rock, if you're asking that. You know what I mean? But we've had several comedians that, Tammy Pescatelli, who's from my hometown of Cleveland, and we've had a lot of good, interesting guests as well.
All right, well, wrapping up, do you have anything you want to say to your fans and listeners?
Oh, I always like to just say thanks. There's really nothing else for me to say, because it's like we've had over 120,000 downloads of our show, which we never expected to get to that point, and it's just amazing to me because I know there's a lot of content out there and there's a lot of choice. You know what I mean? So I'm grateful for those that listen and also stick with us and become actual fans. So that's about all I can say.
And now for people who want to follow you, do you on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram?
Yeah, pretty much platforms. Twitter is at IDMYGD, so it doesn't matter, you're going to die. It's just the initials, IDMYGD. It doesn't matter, you're going to die on Facebook, and then Dave Arena as well on Facebook personally, and DaveArena.com is the website where you can get, that's everything combined, so my stand-up, podcast, you can get all the information at DaveArena.com.